You are about to enter the courtroom of Judge Judith Scheindlin. The people are rulings are final. This is Judge Judy.
Members of the jury, your duty today will be to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty, based on only facts and evidence provided in this case. The prosecution has the burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden remains on the prosecution through the trial. The prosecution must prove that a crime was committed and that the defendant is the person who committed the crime. However, if you are not satisfied of the defendant's guilt to that extent, then reasonable doubt exists and the defendant must be found not guilty.
In the case of V LUXTON, the Crown is here to prove that the first-degree murder charge is reasonable and necessary in this case. The defendant is being charged with the first-degree murder of Charmaine Mark after stabbing her a total of 15 times to the neck and the head. LUXTON not only admitted that he stabbed the victim to an inmate, but had enough time to gather his thoughts instead of going back to his motel, grabbing a knife, and taking the life of a mother of three. He did not have the knife when he originally got in the cab, proving that the defendant intended on killing the victim. It should also be noted that the defendant was forcefully confining the victim during her last moments on this earth. This would mean that LUXTON had full control over the situation and was in no harm. Intoxication is not a defense to crimes in the Canadian legislation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tala, and I'm here today to represent the defendant, Robert Nelson Luxton. In the case of V LUXTON, my client is charged with first-degree murder, but the defense is here to prove that it should be second-degree murder. Luxton being charged with first-degree murder is unreasonable and unfair, because it was not pre-planned, this being a violation of his Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 12. He was under the influence and under extreme intoxication, and he was not aware of what he was doing. He couldn't control himself. How could he control her if he acted in the moment and she called her a slur? He had no time to defuse the situation because of intoxication. He did not plan to kill her ahead of time, and the driver was driving recklessly after Luxton got back in the car. He had the knife to protect himself from the danger, and he went to the motel to get his luggage. This was just in his luggage just from when he was on vacation. He was leaving somewhere and might have gotten the knife for that trip too, not necessarily to kill her. The defense will also prove that the inmate is not completely reliable because of the long period they spent in jail. Thank you.
Taxi!
Get in.
Yo, take me to that hotel.
So what were you up to tonight?
I was at a gay bar with some of my boyfriends.
Oh, those people make me sick. I hate those.
What? Listen here, young lady. I need you to follow my orders. Yeah, at the next lights, turn right. Turn left over there. Get out of the car, but don't you even think about running. Come back here. Come back here.
Crown, do you have any witnesses to call on the stand?
Yes, I'd like to call inmate number 2357 to the stand. Did Robert Nelson Luxton admit to you that he stabbed the woman both inside and outside of the cab that night?
Yes, he admitted to me that he stabbed her a few times in the car, and when she tried to run away, he stabbed her again outside.
Okay. And is it true that Luxton told you that he was in full control over the situation and where the car was going that night?
Yes, he admitted to me that he was in full control. He went back to the motel, grabbed a knife, came back in the car, and she called him a slur. So he pointed the knife at her neck and told her to go in a direction.
Thank you.
So your name is inmate 2357?
Correct.
So you went to jail for 20 years now, right?
Yes.
So from what I've heard, your time in jail has been really bad for you. Is that true?
Yes.
How are your jail friends treating you? Are they treating you nice?
I wouldn't say so.
So do you want to get out of jail?
Yes.
Defense, do you have any witnesses you want to call to the stand?
Yes, I would like to call the defendant himself, Robert Nelson Luxton. So, what's your name?
My name is Robert Nelson Luxton.
Do you remember what happened that night of the murder?
Yes.
Can you explain to me what happened from the beginning to end?
Well, after work, I went to a bar. I'm a homosexual male, so I went to a gay bar to meet some people. After the bar, I called a taxi, and I got in the taxi with a woman. I don't remember her name, but after that, I wanted to go to my motel to pick up a couple things.
So, what did you get from the hotel?
Well, I was checking out, so I was gathering my belongings, and I took some clothes and some towels, all the things I brought. Oh, my knife.
So, what happened when you got into the cab?
When I got into the cab, me and the cab driver struck up a conversation about what happened to me that night. So, I mean, I was telling her I was at the bar, and we had a conversation, and she didn't agree with my homosexual lifestyle. So she called me a vulgar word I choose not to say, but I was distraught. I was very hurt by the words she chose to say to me.
Why did you feel hurt when she said that?
Well, I felt hurt because in my past, growing up as a homosexual kid in the 90s, in the 80s, it was definitely a struggle, and I was called that word a lot, and it brings up a lot of emotions from my past.
How did it feel when she said that to you?
I feel really hurt by that word. It brings a lot of post-traumatic feelings, you know. And like as a child, I always knew I was gay. So like around my teen years in the 1960s and 70s, I was called that word a lot, and it hurts me. It hurt me a lot. I've been through a lot.
So what happened next?
After she called me the slur, I was extremely intoxicated, so it had an impact on my decision making. But I grabbed my knife, which I had in my bag, and I held it to her throat, and I was forcibly controlling her where to go.
So why did you react that way?
Well, I feel like it was because of my extreme intoxication at the moment. I didn't have much control over what I did, but it brought a lot of hatred back that I didn't feel in a long time. So with that hatred and the extreme intoxication, I felt pushed towards harming her.
So what happened next?
After I stabbed her, she got out of the cab and she tried running, and I stabbed her a couple more times after she went out of the cab. After her body was lying there lifeless, I ran away because I was very nervous. I was scared. I didn't know what to do.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, Luxton, did you have too much to drink that night?
Objection. Speculation?
Sustained. Restate your question.
In your opinion, do you think the amount of substances you took clouded your judgment?
Yes,
Okay. Did you ask the cab driver to stop at the motel?
I did.
In that motel, did you grab a knife?
Well, with the knife, I also got my other belongings.
Okay, so you did. When you got back to the cab, did the driver call you a slur?
Yes,
Okay. Did you then force the driver to drive until you told her to stop?
I did.
Okay. Did you use the knife to gain control over where you were going?
Yes,
Once you stopped, did you stab her in the car?
yes,
Did you then force her out of the car and proceed to stab her?
yes.
So, did you stab her more than once?
Objection leading?
I don't.
I'll allow it.
So, did you stab her more than once?
I think so. I was very intoxicated that night.
Okay. About 10 times?
I don't recall the exact number, but I think it's around there. Yes.
About 15 times, maybe?
I'm not sure.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
I think guilty should be guilty on the count of first-degree murder, but yeah, defense lawyer was amazing, had amazing points, and
Thank you guys for agreeing with me.
Your Honor, we've came to the conclusion. The verdict is guilty on the count of first-degree murder.
Section 214 of the Criminal Code of Canada mentions that anyone who commits a murder while confining the victim should be charged as first-degree murder. The juries have come to the conclusion that Luxton fits the description of first-degree murder. I hereby sentence you, Robert Nelson Luxton, to life imprisonment without eligibility for parole for 25 years.
No!
After careful consideration of the infringement of Section 7, 9, and 12, we have concluded that the infringement was justified under Section 1. The trial judge's decision remains correct and the appeal is then dismissed. We reject the challenge to Section 214 of the Criminal Code of Canada.